Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Christi Fraga, right? I said it correctly?
Yes.
She is the first woman mayor in Doral, and she is honestly the epicenter of a lot of things that are happening within the community and a lot of changes that are happening in Miami-Dade County. Her specific municipality, I mean, it's so dynamic. They have the airport. They have so many different economic engines around Doral, and I feel honored to have the opportunity to speak with her, to do a deep dive into the future, the present, and where Doral is at the end of the day going to end up. And Christi, pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. It's so great to have you here. You came to visit me today, but I'm really grateful to be able to be on the podcast and that we were able to connect and share a little bit about Doral's growth and vision and where we're headed.
So I want the audience to get an idea of who you are as a person, what made you go into politics, and basically what's your vision that you have overall for Doral?
So I'm an accountant. I studied accounting and finance at FIU, and that's what I do on the private side. And I kind of just fell into politics. My grandmother used to tell me in Spanish, Christi, es mejor ser útil que importante, which means, Christi, it's better to be useful than important. And obviously my grandparents are Cuban and fled Cuba and oppression to give their family a better life. And so here, I guess my grandmother just kind of always instilled that we needed to be a part of the solution and get involved, and somehow planted that seed in my head, and somehow I ended up in politics. Not my plan at all. Never thought that would be the case, but I actually got involved in the city because I was working with a real estate developer that had issues with infrastructure within the city and kind of tasked me to come and learn and help face those challenges. And we created a steering committee called the Doral Decor Steering Committee, which helped the areas where we have all those tile businesses and stuff. I had a lot of flooding, a lot of private roads. He owned some property there. And so we basically started to come to the city to find ways to be creative in turning those streets over to the city and creating an association that would help create the mechanism to do that. It's very difficult. Still to this day hasn't been done because there's a lot of interests and different owners, and you have to get 61% of the buy-in to be able to do that and create a special taxing district and the whole thing. Something that I hope to be able to try and tackle at some point throughout my mayoralship. But that is kind of how I fell into this. I started to learn more about the city. I had lived here for several years. Now I've lived here just about 25 years. And I felt that there was a great opportunity to make an impact in a community that was growing, that I wanted to raise my family in and leave a mark and say, you know what, we can do this better. We have such an incredible opportunity to start with a blank slate, which Doral was. I mean, when I started, we had 12,000 voting residents and 23,000 people that lived here. Today, we're almost at 90,000 residents. So that was in 2012. I decided to run for council, and thanks to the voters that believed in my vision and our hard work, because I was the least funded candidate. Nobody thought I was going to make it anywhere, but I put a lot of heart and soul into it with my husband, and we knocked on over 5,000 doors and kind of just shared our vision for representation of young families that wanted to be a part of this community. And here I am 12 years later.
and you know what? There's still a lot of work to go.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You're just starting. But you touched on a couple of things that are interesting. That within that time frame that you were describing, 90,000 new residents, a lot of them are young professionals,
Correct.
families that are coming
Yeah.
here. And there's a specific bill that I want to talk about that's called Live Local Act.
Yes.
And basically, which I would want you to dive in deeper in here, but the premise of the bill is to basically create more affordable workforce housing, increase density in communities, for example, like Doral, that's very populated. A lot of people are moving here. I mean, because there's a lot of great things and opportunities here. But the bill also presents some interesting challenges. And under your specific administration, you've been able to tackle some of these problems effectively. And I want you to basically just go over what are your thoughts overall of the Live Local framework, and how is your city adapting to the new regulatory environment?
Yes, so this is I tackled this heavily last legislative session when it came out. It was complete curveball and surprise as I got elected, went to Tallahassee for the first time as the mayor, in like March, I found out this was the first bill that hit the Senate floor, kind of sped through the Senate. And the governor was one of the first bills the governor signed and was enacted in July, and tremendously impacted a community like ours. First, let me start by saying, I think that the intent of the bill and the legislators' intent was a good one. Understanding the rising cost of living in South Florida and the housing costs, they were trying to tackle a big problem and challenge in a creative way. But I don't think necessarily understanding the impacts to local government and communities like Doral, where growth is imminent, and we don't necessarily need the incentives that other communities need. And as a matter of fact, Doral itself had been very creative and already created incentives within our current legislation that was responsible, that incentivized this type of housing. So we had a affordable housing component already with bonuses built in our code that would incentivize developers to build this type of housing in Doral. We had only had one developer that had taken advantage of it, and we have a property here in Doral that was built that had workforce housing, worked into its development, and we gave them a bonus for that. And that was our way of trying to tackle a problem that we saw coming down the line back in 2014, 2015 when we enacted this. So we had foresight on what was coming down the pipeline for Miami-Dade County and South Florida. The problem with the Live Local Act that I see multiple problems with it, but it really creates a strong challenge for local municipalities that have spent time and energy working with its residents to protect the characteristics of our neighborhoods and plan smart development and growth. Basically allowing for almost a hodgepodge of these buildings to come and be erected in areas where we most likely wouldn't have allowed residential communities, or heights that this bill would allow, or density that this bill would have allowed. And that's where it was a huge concern. And we saw it immediately, and that's how we connected. We saw it immediately in an application that came in on Northwest 41st Street and 97th Avenue in the heart of our residential area, right on Doral Boulevard. Basically a overdeveloped plan for residential units with a mixed-use component in that corner. We would have never allowed residential there traditionally within our code, within our comprehensive plan. But because of this bill, this applicant was able to come in and use the bill to do, about 450 units, potentially 14-story buildings, a lot of commercial. And so I immediately acted and put a moratorium in our city, which allowed us to kind of take a pause and create a code that would give our staff the ability to administratively review these applications, which is what the bill calls for. The bill basically preempts local governments from having any say on density, height, and use of these properties if they do 40% workforce housing. So, what we did was we created a code, and I gave you a copy of it, that would allow our staff to put in measures that the bill did allow us to put in to regulate, for example, green space, setbacks, landscaping, what we could regulate. This session, however, so just this 2024 session, legislative session, there was a new bill enacted, SB 328 and HB 1239, which is called the Live Local Affordable Workforce Housing Enhancement Act, which basically enhances the Live Local Act from 2023 and gives them more preemption. It does, however, address our concerns with the heights. So, for example, a community like the one next to this particular property that we're talking about on 41st Street and 97th Avenue would not have been able to go as high in its building as the new bill will regulate, because it's next to a traditional neighborhood, which was my argument in this case, and that's why I decided to bring forward a moratorium, because it was severely impacting a traditional neighborhood of single-family homes, townhouses, and now you're going to put 14-story building next to it. It just doesn't, meets the characteristics of what we would do to protect our neighborhoods.
And why do you think that the legislative body didn't include some type of language there for urban planning or master plans in there for it to make sense? Because
that is a great question.
That's a great point that you brought up, because if I'm raising funds and I raise a bond to build more infrastructure, but now for the current infrastructure that we're projecting, now out of nowhere under this act, they can increase the density, and then that hundreds of millions that you raised is out the window because it's not going to meet the current infrastructure there. So it's like, why do you think that they didn't have that conversation, or those conversations being brought up to them saying, hey, we should incorporate urban planners in this conversation?
So they did have committees and stuff that included urban planners, but handpicked, obviously. But that is a great question. I'm not part of the legislature. These are some of the questions that I asked too, because I think it's really difficult to just carte blanche put one piece of legislation that covers the entire state. I'm not saying that this legislation would not have worked in other areas of our state that need the incentives and have the land and can do this. And I said that when I passed the moratorium, one of my colleagues was like, oh, I want to send this to every municipality and encourage them to pass the same moratorium. And I was like, whoa, no, I'm not doing that. This doesn't do well for Doral, but that doesn't mean that this legislation doesn't fit the bill for some other areas that do need the incentive, that do need the push to expedite affordable housing. Because really the whole purpose of this was to expedite. One of the clauses within this whole bill is that we have time limitations. We have to review these applications within like 160 days. It's crazy. That's a really short amount of time for 18-acre property. It goes through a huge process at the city. Sometimes these things can take 6 to 7 months just to get to workshops and site plan. So to put our planners and our departments under this pressure from the state level, it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow for us at the local level. I love working with our legislators on good policy. I think that this one needed a lot more work. And they tried to address some of it in this Enhancement Act, but I don't necessarily think they got the picture about the concerns that we have at local government. And we're the government closest to the people. So guess whose door people are going to come knock on when you're building a 14-story building in an area that wasn't created for residential?
On your door. Exactly.
So we have to act, right? People are really concerned and upset about this. The other component that is of great concern to me is the financial, the financial part of this is the financial incentives, the tax incentives. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that are being given in tax incentives to these developers. Also tax credits for about 30 years if they meet all the requirements, which means that now you have created a new level of service for me as a municipality. Let's say you're building, for example, we'll take the same property we're talking about that is going to bring about, it's 450 units, and we're in argument with him about that. We're saying in the new bill, the new enhancement bill does clarify that he is not entitled to bonuses, whereas the old bill doesn't say that. And so there's an argument whether he's grandfathered into that. The settlement we did, but basically they want more density than what the bill already allows for. And we're saying no. The maximum density you get is the 25 units per acre, which is the highest allowable density within our zoning code here in the City of Doral, which is what the bill allows them to do. The highest zoning density, the highest density in the highest zoned area of the city you're building in, right? So City of Miami, it's like 1,000 units per acre. It's crazy, something like that.
Yeah, it's nuts.
In Doral, thank goodness, it's not that much. But with our bonuses, you could get up to like 35 units per acre. So that's where the discrepancy and the difference is. And that's when I reached out to you and you had said something like 600 and something units. And I said, no, it's actually 400 because he's calculating at 35 units per acre. We're not. We're calculating at 25 units per acre. We're still kind of
in there.
We're still negotiating that part. But, one of the things that this, the enhancement bill did clarify is that bonus densities are not included. However, it did preempt us in new areas. And one of the things that worries me is that in a development like that, where you're going to bring me maybe 1,200 new residents, I am now not receiving the ad valorem tax base that I would have received in a potentially regular development to meet the level of service that these residents are going to expect of our city. So but now they have to meet the requirements to get the full tax incentive, but most of these developers, I think that their goal is to do that so they don't have to pay, the taxes for 30 years. And then what happens at the end of the 30 years?
Then those get market rate rents.
Correct. So there's really no long-term enforcement or built-in mechanism to make sure that we don't end up back here in 30 years.
So it's interesting that you increase density, you're using Live Local Act, it's helping the residents, but at the same time, it's a negative because the potential tax revenue that the cities will be collecting is going to be pretty much, it's not going to be there for them. So you have increased services, police officers, infrastructure. Then my other question is this. Now let's say we start seeing more of these Live Local Acts start popping up more frequently, the changes here. Areas like Doral are very highly dense. What is the plan of the administration, of council, to basically improve existing infrastructure here in the city or increase public transportation to alleviate it? Because traffic here in Miami is overall, not just here in Doral, everywhere it's terrible. But what are some ideas or creative solutions you guys may be coming up with?
So we're looking at the only way to really fix transit in an area like ours is public transportation. So we've increased our freebie service, for example. We now provide freebie door-to-door access for people who are 65 and over, where we'll take them directly to supermarkets, pharmacies, hospitals, churches, so select area, restaurants in downtown Doral, International Mall, Walmart, that type of stuff. So we have tried to increase the public transportation access. We just bought 8 new trolleys to increase our fleet. And one of the things we're looking at is the redistribution of our trolley routes to make them more effective. One of the things I did as a councilwoman back in 2016 was created a trolley route direct to FIU. So you could jump on the trolley, let's say from Ronald Reagan Senior High, which is on 107th Avenue, and it was a direct route right into FIU, stop at the engineering campus, stop at International Mall, and come back towards Doral. It would also have the opportunity to pick up students that live on campus at FIU that maybe don't have vehicles, get them into the city to work, to consume. So it's a direct route. It's one of the most successful trolley routes we have, and that's because it's a direct route. So it's point A to point B. When people use public transportation, they're not going to leave the comfort of their vehicles if it's not efficient, if it's not effective, and if it doesn't help them save costs. So those are the things you have to look at when creating better options for public transportation. So that's what we're trying to look at. We've invested in more covered bus benches so that, understanding the elements of South Florida, it rains, it's hot. People are not going to stand waiting for a trolley or a bus in a 3-piece suit if they don't have somewhere to hide from the sun or from the rain. So we are trying to invest in those things for the long-term goal of increasing more ridership on our public transit. We also have to look at connecting the final mile. So how do we connect people to the airport, to the metro rail, to the tri-rail, to other forms of transportation? And so those are things that we have to explore as we continue to understand the only ways we will reduce traffic. Now, I will tell you this, and for those who live in Doral, you come here on a Saturday and a Sunday, you're not going to run into the traffic you see in Coral Gables, in Kendall, with all due respect to my neighboring communities. Love you guys. But you don't find that traffic here Saturday and Sunday. It's a very peaceful community. You can get, our city is 15 square miles. It's bigger than most cities, okay? And you can get from point A to point B, from one area of the city to the next in 15 minutes on a Saturday or Sunday. So what does that tell you? The peak hours of traffic in our community are Monday through Friday, in the mornings between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. and in the afternoons between 3 and 6 p.m. Okay? And that's because of all the businesses that are here. We're super, a super dynamic and huge business community. We have a lot of trucks because we have a lot of logistics here. We're close to the airport. But Doral grew around that. It's also why we're such a successful community in keeping the lowest tax rate in the county. So the important part here and the challenge is keeping the balance, protecting the characteristics of our neighborhoods. I'm not saying residential is not the way to go in many cases, and I'm not saying that business is not the way to go. It's about striking the balance and having responsible growth as we see redevelopment happen in our community. Because, we're not going to stop the evolution that is happening in Miami-Dade County and particularly Doral. I can't tell a landowner or property owner, you can't build on your property. What I can do is try and guide them to build the best product that's needed and that meets the characteristics of that area of our community.
And how's Doral? So now that Doral is evolving and becoming the next iteration, well, the natural progression of where it's going, how are residents being able, because there's a lot of changes happening, to retool themselves for the new economy that they're walking into, the new environment? So how is Doral promoting businesses, more growth here? Because you guys are a huge economic engine here to Miami-Dade County.
So we're looking at the type of businesses that are coming to South Florida, right? Entertainment, digital, technology. What are the types of businesses that are moving towards South Florida? We're seeing it. They're coming from California. They're coming from New York. They're coming from all different places, and they're choosing Florida, in particular South Florida, because people want to be here. It's also expensive, though. So that's causing us to lose some of the larger industries that is costing them more to relocate their personnel here. We are a business-friendly community while still wanting to maintain the peaceful and tranquil community, family-oriented community that we aspire to be, and that I think that we've become. Yet again, you find everything in Doral. Look at downtown Doral that didn't exist before. You can literally find a great place for happy hour and a delicious meal. I mean, like the gastronomy scene here is, it compares now to some of the other hotspots of Miami-Dade County. But you really can find a lot to do here with family. And I always say I don't have to leave Doral. I really don't. You can find everything you need here now. So I think it's the challenge now is protecting that, and through this redevelopment phases that we're going through, because we are going through it. I have a lot of applications coming forward now that are redevelopment. They're underutilized lots. Okay, to me and you're like, that's not underutilized. Don't build anything more. But to that landowner, it is an underutilized lot, and unfortunately, the code allows them to maximize that. Before, in the 80s, 90s. It was mostly surface parking. You didn't see a lot of parking garages. So you would see like a building, right? An office building go up and mostly surface parking. Today, that's an underutilized lot. They want to use every section of their floor area ratio, every piece of land, every piece that they can, because it's so expensive. And so we're seeing a lot of that now, is that they're coming back, tearing down buildings and redeveloping these lots. So we have to be very mindful of how we protect the quality of life and the growth of our community through that. But bills like this coming out of Tallahassee make that a huge challenge.
And there's something you touched on that it's a trend that we're seeing now. So Doral City Place, and I want to ask you from firsthand experience, how much of a positive impact has that created to the economy in the sense of becoming another little economic engine there? Because other cities in Miami are following more or less that same blueprint. You have Sunset Place. They're going to be redeveloped as well. You have Southland Mall or Southridge Mall. That one's being redeveloped. So what can residents in those other municipalities or locations in Miami experience? Because they already see it here. And since you're in the cornerstone of everything, you're seeing everything that's going on. How much positive impact has it done, or negative in your opinion?
Doral City Place is a hot topic right now. So if it's interesting because you compare, and they're just a couple blocks away, downtown Doral to Doral City to City Place. There's such different crowds, such different elements. Downtown Doral has attracted more of our local community, and I can go downstairs. We're here in City Hall in downtown Doral. I can go downstairs right now and walk over to any one of the restaurants in downtown Doral. I'm going to run into a neighbor. I'm going to run into one of the moms of my son's school that's, here in the community. And you go to City Place and you don't see that. You're not running into your local Doral people. You're running into people that are coming from outside. And it's interesting because the concepts are not much different. Downtown Doral is residential. It's a mixed use. It's residential, commercial, right? You've got all those elements. And so is City Place. They're both called downtown mixed use, right? Which has different elements all combined. And the idea is that you live, work, and play on the same location. Yet again, City Place has drawn just a different crowd. I think it really has to do with curating the tenants and curating the environment you want to create for your development. Downtown Doral has done a spectacular job of being selective of their tenants. They've been able to do that, right? And that's tough, because if you've got loans to pay and things that you got to do, you know, it's hard to turn away a tenant that's willing to pay. City Place has had a couple of turnovers, and they're great. The management has really tried. I've met with them several times, and they want to be more family oriented. And they've got like Sloan's ice cream, and they've got King's bowling, and they've got a movie theater. But I think they want to be a little bit too much of everything. And so then the nightclubs that have become, a staple there, have made it very challenging for them to be seen as something else. Clearly, we had an incident this past weekend there, and so we're going to be making some drastic changes. Some of our code for quite a while now, since 2007, allowed nightclubs in the community or in the city to be open till 3:59, 4 a.m. And some of these establishments fell under the category of nightclub, and therefore they were allowed to be open till that time. No one ever thought anything could happen in Doral, right? We never would have imagined that what happened here just this past, week would happen in Doral, but it happened. So we have to address it, because that's not the community we want to be. We are a very safe community, and while this is an isolated event, we don't want it to become a common occurrence. And so I will be presenting some changes to our code that will roll back the times to only allow these establishments to be open till 2 a.m. My mom always used to say, no hay nada bueno pasando después de las 2 de la mañana en la calle. She's not wrong. And so we will be rolling back those measures and then adding additional security measures to these types of establishments. It's not that we don't want to encourage these types of businesses in our community. I think it's important to have a social life, a social environment within our city. But I think balance is key, again, and making sure that we're just not overdoing it. If you want to become that nighttime party, or if you want to go to this nighttime partying style, there's great places in Miami-Dade County to do it. We just don't want Doral to be one of them.
I think that's actually a very thoughtful approach to this development that's going on, because of what has happened there. It's counterintuitive. You have an ice cream shop, you have family-oriented things, and at the same time, you have people coming out at 12 o'clock that are drunk, walking around. Yeah. It's like, what are you trying to attract in there?
Correct.
And I think it's a very great approach that you're doing. I think being proactive in this is going to definitely maintain Doral's character. Yeah. And it's really, at the long run, it may hurt the landlord, because that's a huge revenue.
We don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't necessarily think it can hurt them. It's about how we tailor that the environment you're trying to attract, right? So the intent is definitely not to hurt anyone. As a matter of fact, it's to help and to bring that environment that I know they want, because I've met with them about it. And so I think that we just got to have a little bit of a stronger hand about it, so that, the thing is, if you allow it, they're going to do it. And if you don't allow it, then they have to adjust. And so we need to put kind of that strong hand, so that they have to adjust. And I know that things will work out great, and they'll probably end up getting a lot more of that environment, or that those type of people that they want to be enjoying their establishments.
100%. And this is a different question. We're going to deviate a little bit from real estate, but I want to talk about technology and advancement. And number one, Doral's already very advanced for what you guys are doing, especially when it comes to regulation policy. But how is Doral moving forward into the 21st century with artificial intelligence? Is there anything like that that's being incorporated in Doral? Can you even speak on something like that? So I was just curious to see your thoughts on that.
So I'll tell you that we have been looking into utilizing AI for a more enhanced customer service experience, as far as like automation of being more efficient in our personnel. So, and how we respond to 311 calls and, inquiries and things like that within our staff. Because because it takes up a lot of time from our staff to answer the extreme amount of calls that we get to attend to the public's needs. We don't want to stop doing that. I'm actually a huge proponent of that service, right? And that human touch and respect and addressing the issues. But it takes up a lot of time and personnel. And so we're finding ways to use AI to respond and to be attentive to the residents and their needs and to face challenges. We are also using it, and it's not necessarily AI, but technology. We're using it a lot in police. So the technology that's being used on law enforcement is crazy these days. We have LPRs, which are license plate readers. We have over a couple hundred of them within the city that read your license plates automatically. And we have a real-time operations center where they're actually seeing these license plates as they go by. And it could flag a license plate that may have some type of issue. We've caught a lot of criminals through that. And we've also been able to stop crime because of that. And so that's why our crime rate has dropped quite significantly, because we're using this technology to be proactive about, what's happening in the city. There's some other tools that they're using and testing, like reading VIN numbers from satellite. I mean, it's crazy, the stuff that's being looked at. And it's for the purpose of one of the biggest types of crime we're seeing in South Florida is vehicle robberies. And they've gotten so creative, these criminals. And so law enforcement's looking to be 10 steps ahead.
Wow, that's amazing. The future is very, very interesting. And as we wrap this up, I have one question I want to ask you. So what are future developments and projects that are coming down the pipeline that the residents of Doral should be excited for, anticipating? And then I'll ask you one more after that.
Okay, so excited is a tough word for our residents to know that our residents are very anxious about change, right? It's hard for them to accept more development, more growth. Remember I said, you come here on the weekends, you don't got traffic, and it's mostly residents. You don't have a lot of business. So there's, I don't think it's not a secret anymore, because I saw it published that Carnival has put their building up for sale. So it's about 18 acres that they're looking to sell. And, I anticipate that there'll be a mixed use type situation there too. And there will be some residents and some retail, because it's kind of a continuation of what's already in that area, a continuation of this downtown mixed use area. So it's what would be consistent. So it would not shock me to see residential go there. To be honest, I don't think I would want to see industrial or more offices, because that's going to bring more traffic. So I think a mixed use property, responsibly done, well thought out, could be great to see right off of 87th Avenue, really pretty. But that's going to be interesting to watch in the next couple of months to a year evolve. It's also no secret that Seritage, which is the old Sears in International Mall, has undergone bankruptcy, and they've also been trying to offload that. And that's another development that's going to be coming down the pipeline that will also include some residential. We're seeing it on all the malls, Aventura Mall. Those traditional malls are a thing of the past. They're not successful anymore, and so they have to incorporate residential components into it to make it successful. So I think you'll see that mall and that area definitely undergo some heavy redevelopment. You've got the Bridge Point, which is on 107th and 41st Street, which is the old Cal property. You're talking about 170 acres that were purchased. This is before my time. It's already being developed. But basically, they're doing their 2.5 million square feet of warehousing, and then about 150,000 square feet of retail that will be right on 41st Street. They've got some really cool tenants, I think, that people will be happy about, and the retail coming. But that is a heavy amount of industrial traffic, in that area. So that concerns me. But there's great things happening in Doral, and I think we'll continue to see some of that development. Downtown Doral is not done. They're doing 2 new phases of retail that's going to include a sports complex. It'll have pickleball and paddle incorporated onto the roof of all the retail elements. That's going to be kind of cool and gives it that downtown use feel, and it'll be great for the residents in this area. So those are the things that we're seeing happen. These buildings here in downtown Doral will all be knocked down. They're going to be doing more residential, but that's already part of their development plan. That's no shock to anybody because everybody knew that was coming. But those are the things that we're seeing happen and be redeveloped. We're also seeing some projects that had multiple phases. They're coming in and doing those final phases like Midtown Doral. There's also 8800 right here. Southcom is building their homes right now. Mm-hmm. They're doing a whole development, about 240 houses, duplexes, townhomes, and homes that they're doing for their active military. You know that's an active military. There's over 3,000 active military in Southcom that are just kind of scattered throughout the county. So they're trying to, create a development for them. And that's already taken off. So there's a lot. And then, of course, for us as a city, we're building Doral Central Park, 83 acres. It's going to be a regional park that I think will be recognized throughout the county with an amphitheater, an Olympic-sized swimming pool, an aquatic center, a skate track and pump track. Really cool that what we're doing there. It's going to be a beautiful 80,000 square foot rec center with an incredible gym. So a lot of great things happening.
So what's something that you are most proud of during your term here?
As mayor or as councilwoman? As mayor. Well, it's only been 15
We can lump it together.
So.
Put the council member in there.
Well, I'll tell you, as council, for me, it was the FIU trolley route. That was such a proud moment for me because as an FIU alum, watching first-generation college students be able to, use that as transportation to get to university, be encouraged. Some of them didn't have the means to have a car, or they shared a car with family. It was hard for them to get to school. They have to work. So being able to give them that opportunity, for me, those were proud moments. And so I usually use the FIU trolley as one of my flags as a successful project as a council member that really solved the problem, created, higher education benefits, encouraged the youth, impacted the community. As mayor, I don't know that there's one thing particularly yet. I hope that I have additional time to really leave a mark. But I think as of right now, my biggest thing has been that I completed, or I met the commitments I made to the community and the promises I made throughout my campaign. Every single one of them I've been able to do. I created an information and resource center for people here at City Hall to come and gain access. And for me, it was about being more accessible and opening up the doors of City Hall, people feeling like they were part of what we were doing here, and that they felt that we were a direct representation of them, that their voices were actually heard and being implemented. And so I think that I've been able to do that. Doral Central Park is going to be it's going to be huge. It's going to be a big milestone for us. And I'm so, honored to be the mayor while that's being done. So I hope that's part of my legacy. But really for me, it's about if I can leave the community a little bit better than how I found it and inspire someone else to get involved and do their part too. If I can inspire a young lady to reach for the stars, then I think my job is done.
That's amazing. And I want to say thank you for giving me your time here, for speaking about the issues, the plans, the future, and all the positive things that are happening in Doral and how you plan to tackle it. It looks like under your administration here that you guys are on the right direction. And for those who don't know who you are, we're being introduced to you for the first time. They may not live in Doral. How can they get in touch with you?
So you can reach me at mayor@cityofdoral.com or Christi.Fraga@cityofdoral.com. My website's Christi@ChristiFraga.com. Oh, sorry, that's my email address. My website is ChristiFraga.com. Instagram, same thing. I answer all my own messages. I try to be very accessible. I think it's important. It's the least people can expect of their elected officials. You vote for us. You give us your trust to be able to represent you. And so I try to be very accessible, answer. Not always going to like what I have to say in the sense that I'm very direct. And I don't tell people what they want to hear. I tell them sometimes what they need to hear. But I do it with a lot of passion and always putting the best interest of the community first. It's kind of how we met, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I saw your video and I was like, oh, no. We got to talk about this.
Yeah.
We got to talk about this because I think it's important for the residents to be well informed. And I think media and even what you do is such a huge responsibility, and I'm very big about this on media. I'm like, it's so easy to manipulate information, that it's important for people that trust you, right? You want to be trusted. People that trust you, I feel the same way too. I feel like people come to my page for reliable, trustworthy information. It would be very unethical of me to provide information that's not true and accurate. So I try and be very clear and precise and give information and educate people on why decisions are made the way they're made. So, I'm pretty bold about that, which is I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, and you were very open to hearing me out, and I meant no disrespect when I reached out and I was like, we need to talk about this because you need to understand how the Live Local bill works and why it's so impactful to communities like ours. And so I'm really, really appreciative of you giving me the time to express myself to your audience. And also, we had a preliminary conversation before this that was really in depth about that bill, and hopefully you gained some valuable information about how it'll impact the future of Miami-Dade County for real estate.
So it's interesting because Miami is growing so fast. There's so many ordinances, regulation, things are changing on literally a day-to-day basis. And it's important, like you said, to be informed, to know what's going on, but to also use the information to empower you. And that's the message I try to drive to people, that, you don't have to feel hopeless because change is happening and you don't know what to do.
Right.
The key here is to use the information, be thoughtful of your next decisions of what you need to do, and then also hold local leaders and those accountable as well, so they can do what they're meant to do, is to serve the public at the end of the day. But it's been an honor to be here.
Yeah.
I want to thank all you that are watching here that have taken the time. If you made it to the end of this video, I'm going to tip my hat off to you. Thank you so much. And if you enjoy this type of content, or if you want me to reach out to anybody else, please drop in the comments down below. And what are you waiting for? Give me a follow. Until next time.